One. Good morning and welcome to this week's episode of the St. Augustine Chronicles. I'm Karen Zander. Today I'm so excited to have in studio City Commissioner Cynthia Garris. Thank you for coming in.
Yes, it's a pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Sure.
I think this is the first time that I get to be part of the Chronicles.
It is, yeah.
Yes,
Thank
so
you. I'm
that's
honored.
a blessing.
I'm
that's
honored.
a blessing.
Before we start talking to Commissioner Garris, let's do our plugs for the show. Kookaburra Coffee, best hot chocolate in the world, by the way. Proudly founded in St. Augustine in 2012, the Kookaburra is your local home for fresh roasted coffee and made from scratch baked goods. From legendary Aussie meat pies to scones and sweet pastries, everything is crafted to pair perfectly with their signature coffees. Whether you love a smooth, flat white, a bold Aussie iced coffee, or their famous Honey Badger latte. With multiple locations throughout St. Augustine, the Kookaburra is part of the community and part of your daily routine, from morning commutes to weekend strolls. The Kookaburra, Aussie Coffee, St. Augustine Local. And our next sponsor is 97 Park, residential and commercial real estate brokerage. That is my brokerage. Looking to buy, sell, or invest in property in St. Augustine? Trust 97 Park, your local residential and commercial real estate experts. From historic homes to business spaces and investment properties, 97 Park delivers market knowledge, smart strategy, and personalized service every step of the way. And when you're ready to make your move, contact me, Karen Zander, directly at 904-297-3471. 97 Park, real estate done right here in St. Augustine. All right, let's get started. So, Commissioner Garris, I always start by asking people, what brought you to St. Augustine?
Well, first of all, I was born in St. Augustine. I was born in St. Augustine. My parents were born in St. Augustine, and so was my grandparents. Our heritage goes way back in St. Augustine. My family has always owned property in the city of St. Augustine. And when I was 2, I took ill when my parents were moving to Rhode Island, and I couldn't go with them because I was ill and the doctors didn't recommend it. So my godmother, Miss Daisy, she watched me for, I think it was a couple of months, and my mom really didn't want to leave me, but she has a sister named Lois, and that she would, well, her actual name is Dolores, but she actually used to come and visit me. So I never lost the connection with my mom because she looked so much like her and she talked like her. And then I came back to school and I went to Webster. That was my first school that I ever attended here in St. Johns County.
Why did you come back to go to school here?
Well, my parents had 4 children, and me and my brother that's a year older than I, they wanted to kind of, like, the other ones were older, so they wanted like a little break so that they could work more. And so we came here and we went to Webster, and I went to first grade and he went to second grade, and they didn't have like kindergarten at that time.
Yeah.
And so we went there, and I remember my teacher being Mrs. Helyard, yes. Evelyn Helyard was my teacher, my first grade teacher, and I thought she was so beautiful. But back in that era of time, they used to take the little straps and hit you in the hand. And because I was talking.
It was a different time.
Yes. And I was like.
We're talking.
Yeah, I said, won't say anything in this class again unless I'm asked. And my brother, Michael, he got in so much trouble, he had to go down and talk to Mr. Squirrel. So that was in the principal's office. There was like a huge squirrel, and he had to apologize for his behavior. And my brother kept laughing, so he kept getting ahead. He had to say it and be sincere. And I said, I don't want to ever have to go talk to Mr. Squirrel. So we only did that year, and then we went back to Rhode Island. And then I returned in the 70s, and I went to St. Augustine High School for a year and a half. So I met a lot of people then that a lot of them I'm still friends with, my classmates. I finished in the class of 78. And then I went back into Rhode Island, and I would visit frequently because, like I said, I had family here. A lot of them, unfortunately, have passed on to glory. But I used to tell my grandmother I would come back and take care of her. and she passed away before I could fulfill that. But I reside in her home and right now, today, and I said, I couldn't take care of you, but I can take care of your legacy. And that's a blessing. James and Blanche Williams had their house built, and I'm very proud to live there.
Oh yeah, of course.
And I love my neighborhood. A lot of great people live in that neighborhood. A lot of trailblazers live in that neighborhood. And becoming a commissioner, that kind of makes me feel like I'm warrant to be in that neighborhood too. I mean, we have the superintendent of schools that live in my neighborhood, the late Otis Mason. We have the Motleys, Jean Motley and Ruth Motley, Coach Ewing. There's the Hammonds. There's just so many powerful people that came out of my subdivision.
Is that West Augustine, the neighborhood?
Yes, that's West Augustine. And I came back here in 1990, and in 91, I married my husband, Peter Garris. And we had...
I want to interrupt you for just a minute because I want to ask you some questions about what you just said. Okay. Was it hard to go back and forth when you were growing up? Because, you get friends and it's hard to maybe leave. Was it hard to go back and forth or no?
No, because I'm a social person.
Yeah, you are.
And I connect with people. It wasn't hard because, I just picked up where I left off with the ones up north. And when I came down here, I just picked up with the ones down south. And there's an aura about me that people don't forget me. And so it was really easy to make the transition back and forth. The only thing, once I had children, I didn't make it as frequently.
Yeah.
Even when I decided to come and try my romance with my husband, actually we got together by some fluke. 2 of my cousins had gotten killed in a car accident.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And 11 of us came down to do dual funerals because they came from here. And I saw my husband. I knew him prior, and I went to see how he was doing, and it started up a conversation, and we first started having a romance on the phone, but I knew him, and I knew he was a good character. So I decided to take a chance on love and come here, but I kept my place in Rhode Island, and they stay with my family, and because I didn't want to disrupt their lives, and it didn't work. So I came down here, and we connected in that 10 months, and then we got married. You cannot bring children in an unstable environment. We got married, and then we did the Brady Bunch. He had a son, and I had my 3 children, and we grew as a family.
I want to go back to what you said about elementary school and getting in trouble for speaking up, and your brother challenging people and getting in trouble. I feel like we often we want our children. I should say, I always wanted my children to be independent.
Right.
I wanted them to choose their own path and be able to support themselves, and I wanted them to take risks. When you do that, you have to be willing to also then be challenged, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's who creates that independence and that strong path. And I feel like often with children, we try to stifle their independence and their speaking up.
Right.
And
right.
and I
That's
listen
correct.
to you say that, and like, oh, of course they tried to tell you not to speak up,
Right. Well, I think this, when I later went on to college, we were taking a lot of classes, and we were taking, and it was so involved going to college, and nobody would raise their hand, and the teacher was like talking about math, for example. He's just running through these algebra and calculus things, and my mind is spinning, thinking, oh my gosh, and nobody dares says anything. So I would raise my hand and ask questions. How did you get to that equation? I mean, can you do that slower so I can grasp this? Because, you don't want to get a degree in something and not learn. So he would go back and he would do it slower. So we would have a break, and everybody would come up to me and thank me for doing that, because they didn't want to be the person that raised their hand.
That's the story of my life, asking questions that nobody wants.
You're paying for a degree, and it was $233 per credit hour. And so, you're paying for a degree, and the worst thing you can do is acquire a degree and still don't know anything. So I always challenge my children to ask questions, because I feel like your brain needs to be a sponge, and you need to absorb the knowledge that is being taught to you. Otherwise, it's just a waste of your time, and it's a waste of the person that's teaching you.
Yeah.
Teachers want to be challenged sometimes. They want to understand that their kids are getting it and they're getting smart, and they want to call on somebody to answer a question. But if everybody sits there stagnant, they're just in the seat to get a grade, then how are they learning? And how is the teacher growing?
And I think that's starting to be a problem in education now, where you're not able to voice opinions that are different than what either your instructor or the rest of the class. It's very much, no, you have to think this way and don't raise any other opinions. I think that just going through life in general, and this is something that people don't understand about me, but I think you've always understood this. I think it's better to be challenged than to be in an echo chamber of your own views. I think hearing people who differ from you and having to defend your position, or saying, you know what, you've actually taught me something and I think I agree with you. I think that's good in life. I think challenging people and having people challenge you is a good thing, because if you still at the end of the day have truly listened and you still feel like your way of thinking about something is what you're going to stick with, then you've in your head at least justified that. You're not just blindly following along. I think it's a shame that just in life in general, challenging people is frowned upon.
Yes, I agree. I think that we as people, the world is a melting pot. And I think everybody brings something different to the world. And I have this mindset to always leave people better than I find them, because there's a lot of hurting individuals out there. And that's why I was so inspired about the day center, joining the Home Again, because when I lived up north, I ran a program called Feed a Friend. And what we would do, we would serve a hot breakfast every morning, and we would empower our homeless people with canned goods to eat during the course of the day. So we didn't have the begging for money on our streets, fortunately. What we had is, if you people are fed and they have a safe place to reside, we had a YMCA that they had rooms for the homeless. And so you didn't see them sleeping in parks and on benches and things of that nature. So I had a lot of empathy for the homeless. And even when I campaigned to become the commissioner, I went and interviewed the homeless, because some people want to be homeless because they don't want to have the responsibility of bills and a dwelling. But some people just had a bad break in life, and they lost 2 paychecks. Now they're behind and they can't catch up.
I think many people are closer to that than we realize.
And they're facing eviction. And with all the different things going on with Social Security being at risk, a lot of seniors are concerned, is their money going to be in jeopardy?
Yeah,
and
many people are close to that situation.
And so, there's that. And so I just have a compassion for people, and I have a great discernment of knowing people. I could be in the supermarket and somebody can be in line in front of me, and I'm just there, putting my items up, and they're bringing it out, and they strike up a conversation. And believe it or not, they start telling me their life story, and I've never met them. I don't know. I guess they see the spiritual side of me.
I think it's because you come across as someone who will listen.
Yes. And so I have some that have told me some real horrible things that have happened. I'll step aside and say a prayer for that individual, that their life turns around. One time I said a prayer for a young lady that was telling me they had over in Lincolnville, they had a community sale, and a young lady I met, she had a Tweety Bird car, and I like Tweety, and she used to ride around in the Tweety Bird car, and it would make me smile every time I see it. The Tweety face was put on the hood of the car.
I remember that car.
Yes, and so I went there, and the Tweety, that hood was standing up. And I said, "Are you the one with the Tweety car?" Because I looked, and she said that she had gotten in a bad accident, but she asked them to give her the hood, and so that she could use it when she gets another vehicle. And so she walked me around. She said she had a yard sale. She was sharing with me that her roof was leaking, that she was going to have to do a bed and breakfast or something with her place because she couldn't afford to do all these things. And she had insurance, and the insurance didn't pay for it. And she was going into a lot of things. And it was like right around the time that I had lost my husband. But I felt her spirit, and I told her, she took me in her house and she showed me her Tweety. She had everything Tweety. But I asked if I could pray for her, and I did. I prayed that the insurance company call her back. I prayed that she had a financial breakthrough. I prayed that people would come to this yard sale and buy everything she had out there so she could raise the funds she needed. And we embraced each other, and I left. And she remembered that I worked for the city, but she didn't remember what department I worked in. And so it was such a blessing that I went to Publix on the island one day, and I saw a Tweety car pull into the parking lot. And I thought, oh, Tweety's back on the road. So because she said her nickname is Tweety as well. And so I go in, I started to look for her, but my spirit said, don't look for her. If it's meant for you to connect, you'll see her again. She happened to be the person in line in front of me. And she turned around and she hugged me. And she said, everything that I said to her in that prayer happened. She said the insurance company called back and they're coming to put a roof on. They came back and put a roof on her house. She said that a patient because she was a nurse, a patient that she took care of left her his house and all his money. And so she lives on the beach. And she also said that that everything sold from the yard sale. And she says, I wanted to thank you so much for that prayer because your prayer changed my life. And it was just so warm and amazing to touch somebody's life.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm fortunate that God puts me in places to help people that are vulnerable. And they can be strangers. They can be somebody I know. I start my day every day with prayer because I need God to order my steps. I like to make the right decisions for me. I like to be a better person today than I was yesterday. I think when anybody knows better, then they should do better. And there's nobody walking perfect, and neither am I. But I have always lived by treat people how I want to be treated. That's my motto, always in life. Would I want somebody to talk to me that way? Do I want somebody to be mean and nasty for no reason? Do I want to look down on somebody? Because life can change at the split of a dime. And so I always walk with integrity and trust and believe who God says I am. And I never want to disappoint him in any decisions that I make.
I want to go back to, you said you have 3 children. May I ask, were you young when you had your children?
I was very young when I had my first child.
That's not an easy thing.
No, that's not an easy thing. It caught my parents by surprise because I was like in the house a lot, and my sister and my older brother, they're like, you need to get out, you need to start going to parties, you need to do this, you need to do that. Because everybody knows we got younger siblings and you don't never go anywhere. And I was thinking, I don't need to. And, but anyway, I started going out and so forth. And I got upset with one of my friends, and I decided to go back into my solitude, I guess. And one of my friends one of my brother's friends came to my house, and he said he had to go to the bathroom, and he came to my room, and he just woke me up and told me that he wasn't really coming to my house to see my brother, that he had an interest in me, and how come I don't go anywhere anymore. And he asked me to meet him the next day so he could discuss this further. So I said, okay. Well, make a long story short, he was the first guy that I had ever been with, and I ended up getting pregnant, and I was only 15 years old. And it was a shock wave to my family. I grew up in a 2-family home. It was a shock wave. I was a daddy's girl in that window of time, and he just didn't want me to have my son. He wanted the life that he thought that I should have and my mother my mom got pregnant at 16, and my dad was 19, and they got married, and he raised them. My dad didn't want to sign the papers for me to marry my son's father. So I had to be categorized as that type of girl for a period of time.
And younger people don't understand that now.
Yeah,
It was different.
But I think because I was so mature, because once I realized that I carried a life, and I have not one single regret that I decided to have my son. But I feel like if these young women that get pregnant young, if they stop worrying about the guy and focus on the blessing of having a child, their lives would be so much better. Because the guy can move on and get a new girlfriend, and you have this baby. Some people might resent that, but I looked at it as a blessing.
Well, and it's a massive responsibility, and
it's
you
a
have
massive
to take
responsibility. And I decided to grow up real fast. I decided to get jobs in the summer and save my money so I could buy diapers and different things for my son. I didn't want my son to call anybody mom but me.
Did you continue to live at home?
I ended up going when I got pregnant, because like I said, it was a little rocky for my parents. I went and lived with my oldest brother, Sam, who was my protector. He wouldn't let anything happen to me. He would fight the world if he had to. I went to live with him and his wife, and they had a little boy, and he was so cute. His name is Alonzo. He's my nephew. And the same thing happened to him. That's kind of one of the reasons why my dad didn't want me to get married, because he got married. But he loved the person that he chose to marry. And he would stick his little bottle in my navel because I told him there was a baby in there. And he'd drink his bottle, and then he'd stick it in my navel to feed the baby. And it's so funny, when I came home with my son, he lifted up my shirt, and then he said, the baby. Like, he associated that you had the baby. And he was only cute. He was only like 18 months, but he had put it together. Yeah. And then he wanted to hold the baby. He wanted to hold the baby and everything. And he would look in the bassinet all the time at the baby and looking like, when are you going to let me hold this baby? And so I finally let him hold the baby, and he was holding him so tight. My son's eyes was like bulky, like, oh gosh. His dad was active. His dad pleaded with me to name him after him. And I was 15 and he was 16. Were we ready to really get married in a window of time? Probably not. But I always kind of resented that I was that girl. Because when I moved here, because I was in high school, my son was 7 months old, and this guy that liked me took me by his aunt's house, and I could hear her mouthing out in the background that I was a ready-made family, and I'm that type of girl. And I'm thinking, no, I'm not really. My parents just worked all the time, and they didn't know that I was thinking about having sex. So they couldn't tell me, let's get you some precautions. And it was kind of funny. He told me, like, we had 2 encounters and I was pregnant. And if I would have known, then he said, we need to get some birth control. And it was too late at that point. So, I think life lessons make us stronger. And I think that the world should see you as the person, not necessarily your color. I think they should see you as the awesome person you are. So when I see people, I see their spirits more than the person. So I've never had a problem with getting along with anybody. And so I was glad I was brought up a lot in the North, because I had so many wonderful friends that I got from school. I mean, my second grade teacher, because like I said, I went to first grade here. Her name is Christine James, and we have been friends all of our lives. And it was funny, when I got pregnant with my son, her father wanted me to kind of like disconnect, because I'm that type of girl now. He was real spiritual or whatever. And I came to Florida, and then she got pregnant and I wasn't around her. And he's like, oh, that good friend of yours. Now I was that good friend, because she fell into the category with me. And y'all need to have your babies play together and do this and do that. Mm. But it's funny how when the game changes, people's perception changes. But I salute any single parent that takes on the responsibility of having children. It's not easy. You will be judged. The struggle is real. And especially if the dad is not committed to assisting you, but you can do it. My children, I married Peter My oldest son was 15. He decided he wanted to stay up north with his dad because he had so many friends. My other children were 11 and 12.
May I ask? So there's two more that you.
Yes, I have 3 children. And the other 2, they were like school on the brain. School, study. They played school. They loved school. They had a hunger. They would read a book in a day. They would come in from playing to watch Jeopardy and just answer all the questions. And I was like, they're going to send these kids on Jeopardy. We get paid. But and my son George, and he's doing very well.
Is he middle or younger?
He's the middle. And he would challenge everybody. So when you talk about challenge, he was my challenger. Hazel's a challenging person too. She's ran. She just came back from Tokyo from running, and she's a charity runner. But they all are brilliant in their own right, and they're all financially secure. So I don't get those calls that a lot of parents get about, Mom, can you send me some money? Mom, can you do this? They do the check on Mom. Mom, how are you doing?
How do you think you created in your children the independence and the ability to thrive on their own? How do you think you did that?
I always told them that education was the key, and that's why they were driven. I always told them that in some people's perception, being Black is already a strike against them. But you don't have to be dumb and Black. And if you're educated, then it will open doors for you. And so they thrived. And I used to tell them, because when they were little, I was trying to go to college. And I posted something about that today on my page. And I had a mentor that told me that it's okay to go back after your kids are grown. So I would tell them, I'm here for you guys now, but I'm going to go get my degree when you guys are grown, because it's attainable. And I was a young mom. When they used to upset me, I used to say, I can't wait till I'm 38. And they would stop playing. They turn around and say, why? And I said, because you guys will be grown and gone. And then I could live how I needed to and fulfill some of my dreams. And then they would act right. So I wouldn't say that again for a long time. But when I turned 37, my daughter was the last one to leave, and she went into the Army. So they had pathways, and they were, I just watched their minds go from just being ordinary kids to seeking goals and being brilliant. And, at one time I thought, maybe that's why I was born, to have these children that are doing amazing things. And then God spoke into my spirit saying, I have plans for you. And then I had ran for office for clerk of courts in 2000, because I went to the clerk and I asked, we had 46 people leave, and we were only like 80 something people in staff at that particular time. And I said, we got to do something to motivate the staff, because we were friendly. And
you mean you worked for the county at the time?
I worked for the clerk of courts for St. Johns County. Mr. Markle hired me. I came in under his leadership, and I was the fixer. And what I mean by that, anytime a department was going through something, he would transfer me into that department and help clean it up. And as soon as I get used to my coworkers, there'll be a memo come out, and I get shipped somewhere else. And
that's what you get for being good at your job.
Yeah, and I resented that. And then my spirit said, knowledge is power. Just absorb all of this like a sponge. And so I know a lot of stuff legally. I know the law in Florida, because I worked there for 10 years.
And you also know just how to get along in organizations and challenging
And I worked with a lot of attorneys, and I worked at a lot of title companies, and I would ask questions about stuff. Why do we do it this way? And so I learned.
Oh boy, organizations love that. Why do we do it this way?
Yeah, but I needed to know, especially when I had to send paperwork up to the judge. But for probate and, Baker Acts and things.
But the thing that gets me, I hate this answer, and I get it so often when I question organizations. Well, that's the way we've always done it.
That doesn't mean that's the right way.
Right? Well, doing something for 30 years is not necessarily the right way to do it.
Yeah.
You can change.
And so I did that, and then everybody wanted me to run again. I had to resign to run. So I was smart enough to make sure I got my 10 years in, so I could be vested and get my retirement. And so they wanted me to run again when that seat became available. But instead I went in a different direction, because some people were asking me how come we didn't have sidewalks in our neighborhoods and why kids had to go to the school bus in the middle of the street. And I was like, I don't know. That's a good question. So I started calling and getting the runaround. And so I ran for city commission
And
in
do you
2002.
remember? Thank you. Thank you.
2002. So 20 years later, I became that commissioner for that same seat. And that's after talking, because I was working on campaigns behind the scene, but I had no desire to run after 2002. I decided to go for a sure thing and educate my mind, and because I would win at that, educating the person that I'm becoming. And so I went to school to acquire my bachelor's in business and marketing, because I could sell you your own shirt, just put a different spin on why you shouldn't get rid of it and sell it to somebody else, because that's a gift that I have. I like sales. I've sold Avon. I've sold home interior, had shows and things. I like presenting things to people. I even sold cars at Lighthouse Toyota. I sold 43 cars in 4 months.
I can see you being very good at selling cars in particular, because I think that people realize, well, she's not just going to tell me what she's supposed to tell me.
Yeah, I would. And I would walk around the car, and men would be so impressed because we went through this intense training, and there was 13 of us that started at one time. And I was the last one standing at the dealership. And then I went into becoming the receptionist and assisting the general manager. His name was Chad Miller at the time, to screening his calls, knowing who he wanted to talk to and who he didn't want to talk to. And I was going, at that particular time, I was getting my bachelor's degree in marketing. And so it was a win. But I was married, and I would have to, when I was selling the cars, I would have to work from 8 to 8. They call that bell to bell. And so, I didn't really get a time to spend a lot of time with my husband. And so I told him that I would need to leave. So they gave me that job so that I could just send the calls out to the guys. But it was so funny. You ask the people when they come, what are you looking for in a vehicle? And the women would a lot of times say safety. And the men was like, the engine.
Power.
Yeah. And so I would take, so if the couple comes, I show the women the safety about her and the kids, about how the engine would drop and go underneath the vehicle instead of back on them, and how they had bars in the side doors so no car could just indent how it does. And then the guy would be like, yeah. And I said, sir, would you like to know about the horsepower in this vehicle? And then they wake up like, what? And then I would go around and they would be looking at it, and it's like, let's go inside. And then I'm selling the car. And they would tell me to rip the person's head off. And I said, no. I said, I want to sleep at night. I don't want to be all about me getting a commission. I want it to be about me, them every time they get in their vehicle, that they like the sale that happened. And I would always empower them to tell them, let's not just go with the car payment. We need to call your insurance company. We need to add those two together so that you know how much you're paying for that vehicle every month. And they really thought that was amazing that I pointed that out. So we would lock all that in, and then they would thank me. And then I told them, like, some of them really knew that they couldn't afford a Camry. And the Corolla had just came out new. And I would say, this is just a smaller version, but your payment is going to be an extra $150 less a month, which I'm sure could pay another bill. And they respected that. And then they would get the Corolla, because I believe in, people trust you. And so you should not break that trust. So they would send their friends, and they would be like, I'm looking, and all the guys be out there. I'm the only woman standing out there. There was two, and then I was the only one standing out there. And they were like, I want her. And it was funny. It was funny. It was great. I enjoyed it. It was funny. There was a guy that was really mean, ruggly, didn't like nobody but people that were like him, kind of thing. I'll say that. And he came with his wife, and he started yelling at all of us, saying, no, we're not here to buy a car. I'm just looking. And he kept screaming. So they all went inside and said, it's break time. We're not dealing with this guy. And I just stood there. And then I slowly started walking toward them. And they came in one of those big old trucks with the rebel signs and all that. And he says, we're not buying a car. And I said, sir, I'm just here in the case that you want to look inside a vehicle. I'm not hounding you. It's not that important to try to pressure you into buying a car. And his wife was like really staying long at one. And I said, let me just go get the key so she can look inside. She doesn't need to peek inside the car. She needs to actually get inside the car. I sold them that car.
Of course you did.
Yeah. Because you need to know when to back off, and you need to know when to push ahead.
Yeah, and it's also not about making the sale ever.
Yeah.
I've I own the real estate brokerage, and I've talked more people out of buying than I've talked people into why they should buy. I'll be very frank. I've turned down more listings than I've taken. I've talked people out of buying more than I've talked people into buying. I don't ever talk people into buying, but because my thing is, well, I'm going to be honest with you, and
it's their decision, and you're just there to kind of guide them into whether it's the right fit for them. You know.
So you worked for the county for a while, and then you started working for the city, which is, I don't think any other commissioner has come from a city staff role to being a commissioner, correct? You're the first person that's done that.
Exactly. When I worked for when I first got hired at the city, I started as a parking attendant. And there was a guy there named Joe Botafuco, I believe his name was. He told me that I was too young to work part-time because there was no benefits. You didn't get paid for holidays. You didn't get paid for various things. You didn't get health insurance and things of that nature. But my husband was still alive in that window of time, and I was on his health insurance. So I really didn't think that was important. And he said he had been there for 16 years, and if he left tomorrow, that he would get nothing. And my position was they really treated the part-time people like labor people. They really didn't have any grit in them. You know what I'm saying? They didn't really value them as much as I think they could have in that window of time when I reflect back on that. So I took his words and I decided to do that. So I applied for 5 positions. And I had a marketing degree and a master's degree when I was applying for these positions. And I was always told, we have somebody a better fit. We want somebody that feels more like family.
What?
Yeah.
What is that?
Basically, they didn't want a black person on there. Yeah. And listen, I've heard it all. Okay. And so I was like, oh, okay. And so I had became really great at the parking garage. So we used to have, our computers would go down, and they would call a man from Jacksonville to come and bring the computers up. So I decided to watch what the man did and ask him, what did you touch? And show me this and that. So they never had to call him again because I would go down and bring the computer back up. And so they was like, wow, she knows how to do that. And that was saving them hundreds of dollars. So what happened then was they stopped putting the job postings up because I would see them in the break room and I would apply for the jobs. And so
they stopped putting the job postings up to keep you from advancing?
So that they
because you were so well qualified.
Yeah. So one day I overheard a couple of people, a mom and daughter talking that both work for the city. And her daughter, Michelle, she was, we really work well together. She was pregnant, and her mom was saying that would be a great job for her if she wasn't pregnant. And so I questioned what job, because again, there was no more postings. I don't know if it was deliberate that they didn't put the postings up. I would hope to give them the benefit of the doubt. But she said that it was a custodian position. And I said, really? And they said, yes. And she said, so Miss Cynthia, you don't even need to know no more about it. So I went back in my cubicle, because we had like these little, I was in the cubicle. It was a little office, little space that we had. And I had a conversation with God that, do I need to humble myself to rise again? And it came back to my spirit that God wanted you to move if this job made $25,000. Now the job closed the next morning at 9. And I didn't get to leave the parking garage until 6. So I called I saw a coworker that went back and forth and asked him to get downtown, go to HR, get a transfer form and the job description. Because at that particular time, they put the pay on the job description. So they went downtown. They came back. I was looking for him. I was like, please don't let him forget. He came back to my window and he handed me the paperwork. And so I said, thank you. The job closed at 9. Before 9 o'clock that next morning, I walked in there, I filled out the form and went to turn it in. And there was a sweet soul named Miss Diane Jacobs that worked in HR. And she says, oh no, Miss Cynthia, you do not need to apply for this job. And I didn't put anything about my degrees on my paperwork. It's like, oh no, you shouldn't. And so I said, just submit my paperwork. And so I had an interview with a gentleman named Charlie Hill and Mark Harrington. And we sat, I decided to dress down a little bit, and I went in just with like a nice jacket, a pair of jeans. I didn't want to look like I look now. So anyhow, I went in and he was talking to me and he was asking me why I wanted this job. And I told him I needed benefits. I want to get paid for vacation, etc. And so I told him that at that particular time, there was a young lady named Kathy that used to maintain the garage. And because she was out on medical, something medical, I don't know if it was pertaining to her or her mother, because I know she was taking care of her mom too. But I would go and get the picker and a garbage bag and go take a walk in the first floor and pick up any trash that I saw and put it in the bag and put it to be discarded. And so I told him that. And he said, you do that? And I said, yes, I am charging people to come into the parking garage and they need to see a clean space. And so I don't want them to see trash all around because they won't feel like their vehicle is in a safe place. So he hired me on the spot. And I told him that I had one request. And he said, okay, what is that? And I said, I need Sundays off. I need Sundays off because that's my day of worship. And he said, well, you got it. He said, because I'm not going to get struck by lightning when I walk out this building because I told you couldn't have Sundays off. So anyway, he hired me right there on the interview, and so when he brought the description back, the job paid $25,000, and there was $25,100. So there was my $25,000 that God told me, and there was the $100 that's what He wants you to do. So I called my kids because we all got our masters in 2006, and I told them that I was going to take a custodian position, and would that embarrass them? And they told me to do what you got to do, Mom. Do what you got to do. And I said, I want benefits. I need the clock to start ticking now for me to get vested, not 10 years from now. And I had applied for all these other positions and didn't get them. I'd get a letter back saying, thank you for applying, the form letter. And so I did that job. I remember going to my church and telling my pastor, because we had been on the campaign trail together. That was the late Ronald Stafford, and he had ran for sheriff when I ran for clerk of court. And he said, well, you be the best custodian that they ever could imagine. And I said, thank you. And that's what I shall be. And so because I worked at the government house and at the police station, they would question me like, you don't seem like a custodian. And I would tell them who I was, that I had children and different things. And they were totally impressed by that. And so they were looking at me very strange. And so the ironic thing was Charlie was retiring. He told me he was going to retire and he was going to take this buyout and leave. And I told him that he was too valuable because he was really a nice person. And he gave me that full-time opportunity. And I told him I think he should stay. So he stayed another year. And then he told me he was really going. And I said, well, aren't you going to get more money if you work another year versus taking the buyout? And he said, yes. So he stayed, and then he left the next year, and 32 people applied for that position, and it got down to 3 of us. And when I had my interviews, I dressed up, and I remember Pickett saying, didn't you work today? And I said, yes, but if you want more, you got to be more. And I shook their hands and they asked me all these questions. They gave me a test and all the things of that nature. And I questioned them about why I was the better choice when they had these interviews. The first time, 2 times, I didn't say anything. Then he called me back for a 3rd time. And I said, you need to just write down some questions, because they always asked if I had questions. And I said no, because I just wanted to go back to what I was supposed to be doing. And so I wrote a list of questions because I was tired of the whole process being unknown. It went on for weeks. And one person, her name is Terry, we were friends. And when she left, she told them that they should give her the job. They wanted to offer the job to her, and she said no. They were only giving her a 50-cent increase. Her and the other person was Lucy, was the city manager's coordinator, and they both had great jobs already. And so I told them that I had applied for the city manager's coordinator position, but I didn't get told by the HR person. I'm sitting in the doctor's office, and she did all her check marks except for telling me of the interview, and said, "Oh, where are you?" And I said, "Excuse me, I'm in the doctor's office. I just came from the waiting room to the room. If I was in the waiting room, I probably would have left." But she said, "I forgot to tell you, you have an interview." And I said, "Well, when is it?" "Right now."
Come on.
So anyhow, I said, she said, "I'll just reschedule it." So in the meantime, they opened it up to the outside, and Lucy came in and got the position, because they were aggravated at that point that I wasn't there. Not that it was any fault of mine. So I told them that if they gave it to her, then I want to have the opportunity to get that job, because I felt like I should have received that job, had an opportunity to get that job before. And so anyhow, I moved on from that. I was blessed to get the coordinator job, but I did express some things to them. Was I better? I have degrees. Are you really using me to my full potential? Should I remain a custodian, or should you use me to use my degrees in this department? You ask yourself, pull my file like you pulled my friend's file, and look at the benefits of me going into this position. And sometimes you need to see people rise from the bottom to the top. And that's what I was doing.
Well, we don't have a lot of time. I want to get to some of the more current things. I could talk to you for hours, so I don't want to cut you off. But one thing that I really appreciate about you, and it's a rare quality, especially in a female, is you are never afraid to own your power. I think that women are afraid to do that. I think that we're conditioned to be afraid to do that, to dumb it down, to not take, our place. And I never feel that way about you. And I appreciate that. I look up to you for that. It's something I'm just really grateful to see from you. What do you think gives you that ability to own your power?
Well, I posted today that I had a mentor named Florence Gray. What I didn't say in the post was one time I seen her put her boss on blast. I didn't know it was her boss at the time. She flew out and she was really speaking to him, and he dropped his head and went out. And I asked her, who was that? And she indicated it was her boss. And I said, and you talk to him like that? And she said, I'm going to teach you something right now that I want you to take with you. She said, when you're right about something, you own it. And when you're wrong, she says, but by the same token, when you're wrong about something, you have to take it.
Yeah.
And so I believed in that. And she said, because you're going to come into a lot of different situations that you need to own who you are. And so I call things that are pertinent to me. I feel like my brain is the vault. And when something's important, then I lock it in. So being asked to run for city commissioner by a friend of mine that's a pastor, to run because of the George Floyd situation and to create diversity on the commission. When I ran, the mayor's seat was open, and the first person that donated to my campaign told me to shift gears and run for the mayor. And I thought they were joking. And I told them they should run for it. And I look now and realize that they had that much faith in me in that window of time. Having not been on the commission before, having reviewed some of the meetings, I thought, I need to see how they operate. I need to see how the mayor operates. And I really saw some good mayors. I want to say that I really admire Tracy Upchurch and his leading style. I really like what I liked about Joe Bowles being the mayor, that Joe Bowles would have is, even, I don't care who he talked to, from the custodian all the way to the CEO, he always talked to them like that conversation was the most important conversation.
That's Joe. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I always thought that that is a great thing, a great quality. And that's how I am with people. I have been
and I will agree with you on that. That is how you are.
So
with people.
I have been on the commission. I see how it operates. There's things that I have said in commission meetings that my fellow commissioners have not heard me, or they looked at me a deer in headlights. When the public comes, you have to think about this for a minute. When the public comes to a commission meeting, they have a concern. Okay. And they probably, a lot of them are not public speakers, but they have had a concern that they got off their jobs early, that they paid for parking, that they fill out a card to speak before the commission. And by the first minute of that, they're nervous and they're trying to fill out the commissioners like, who's going to hear what I'm saying?
And the clock is ticking and you only have 3 minutes. It's so hard.
So 1 minute has gone. Now they have 2 minutes to say. So 9 out of 10 times the buzzer goes off before they speak. When John Reagan was the city manager, he would turn sometimes and acknowledge something, what they said, and told them who to go in the back and speak to. David is a different kind of city manager. He doesn't do that. I have suggested that he considered doing that, but he hasn't fallen into that role. So I have asked that we have a commission response right after public comments, because the last thing I want to do is go home and feel like that was a waste of time.
Well, there again, though, I think it's because you want to be challenged. You want to hear a view that isn't maybe the one that you have. You think that's helpful. You think you can learn from that. I think that's where you're coming from on that. Right.
So that it's just like so if we have a commission response, not that we get into a debate because now their time is finished, but to say, I heard Mr. Smith for coming in today, and we will have somebody reach out to you. Or I heard you, and when it's huge.
I heard you. I heard
you. And we will take matters into finding out, having somebody reach out to you about your concerns. Yeah. We don't do that. And sometimes I write notes, but I don't get the card. So I have to write the name down and what they were talking about real quickly. And then at the end of the night, bring it back to the commission.
When the public speaker is gone.
The public speaker is gone. Yeah. We done went through a whole bunch of things. Everybody's looking aggravated because they want to go home. Why do you have all this to say, Commissioner Garris? So I want to change the way the city runs. It's not a black thing. It's not a white thing. It's the right thing to push for a change downtown.
So I hear you. It's not a white thing or a black thing, but we don't have a lot of time. I do just want to touch on this. You have made history already.
That's right.
I don't think, knowing you, I don't think that you woke up one day and said, my goal is to make history. I don't think you grew up thinking that, but you have made history. You will forever be in the history books because you are the first Black female City of St. Augustine commissioner. But I want people to realize, not only are you the first Black female City of St. Augustine commissioner, you are the first commissioner in St. Johns County to be a Black female. There's never been a county commissioner who's a Black female, and there's never been a beach commissioner who's been a Black female. So you've already made history.
That's correct.
You will be in the history books. And if you win as the mayor, and I'm not going to privately, but if you win as the mayor, you will again make history. I want to ask you, how does that feel?
That feels amazing to come to be here in the city that I was born and my parents born, and my children weren't born here. They were born in Rhode Island. But to know that I made history, that my name will go on long after my demise, who I am.
That's incredible. Really.
It is incredible. It's a great feeling. And I didn't just come up with one day saying I'm going to run for mayor. And I have I respect the current mayor. So it's not about her position. It's about changing the dynamics on how the meeting is run.
It's about trying to accomplish something.
Yes. And so the thing is for me is I want to empower the people that come. I want them to feel like they matter. I want them to feel, I go everywhere. I mean,
Yes, you
people
do.
know me because I code so many things, and
Yes.
some of my fellow commissioners are not there. And sometimes I inquire and they say they weren't invited. And so I'm like, okay. And then I just concentrate on me being in the room,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so I want to be a blessing to my community. I'm a widow. My children are grown. My grandchildren are grown. I have the time and the effort and the willpower and the determination to be successful. I prayed about this. I went back and forth. And every time I let it go and just decide, just to run for reelection in my seat, God would send somebody to ask me, why not? And I was told by a gentleman that I have high regard for, one of the veterans. He said to me one day, if you don't run for mayor, we will never have a black one. And so
That's an incredible thing to hear.
And I said, I just looked
about
at him.
yourself.
Yeah. He said, think about it. You're educated. You worked. And I know, I thank Troy for mentioning me this morning, but I have 17 years of dealing with the city because I've been a commissioner now for 4.
Mm-hmm.
So I have 17 years, just as much time as our current mayor. And I have 10 years I have 27 years of local government and 2 degrees. And my master's is in organizational management. We can be better. And I expect better. And that's why I'm running for mayor.
I have so much respect for you for just saying things like that. Again, we may or may not disagree. I'm not going to get into that here, but I really respect people who, like I've told you, they own their own power. I think that women so often are conditioned to not claim your power and to, we're told we're too much. We're told we're too direct. We're told we're too bossy. We're told we're too whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I have just such a tremendous amount of respect for you for owning your power and for claiming your worth.
Mm-hmm.
And so our time is up today. I could talk to you for hours, and I apologize. I regret that we don't have more time because you do have so much more of a story to tell. But I just want to thank you for giving young women a person where they can look at you and say, you know what? It's okay to say, no, I'm good at this. No, I can do this. No, I want to do this. And to have the true conviction to make change that you believe is for the better. I really appreciate that about you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Thank you for letting people get a little more of a window into my soul. Thank you for everybody that donated to my campaign before. And I have a strong team in place, and I'm going to have different places all around our city for people to come out and meet and talk with me and feel me, who I am.
Well, you are the epitome of what my show is. I want to give ordinary people who are not ordinary, they're extraordinary, but some of them don't know it. I want to give ordinary people a chance to tell their story and to create a living history of St. Augustine and St. Johns County. And you are the epitome of what my show is about. So thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate the time that you gave me.
Thank you for having me, and thank everybody that's viewing this, and know that the city will be in good hands if I become your mayor.
Thank you for joining in today. This was the St. Augustine Chronicles.